مسلمون واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم إذ كنتم أعداء فألف بين قلوبكم فأصبحتم بنعمته إخوانا وكنتم على شفا حفرة من النار فأنقذكم منها كذلك يبين الله لكم آياته لعلكم تهتدون ولتكن منكم أمة يدعون إلى الخير ويأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر وأولئك هم المفلحون ولا تكونوا كالذين تفرقوا واختلفوا من بعد ما جاءهم البينات وأولئك لهم عذاب عظيم يوم تبيض وجوه وتسود وجوه فأما الذين اسودت وجوههم أكفرتم بعد إيمانكم فذوقوا العذاب بما كنتم تكفرون وأما الذين بيضت وجوههم ففي رحمة الله هم فيها خالدون تلك آيات الله تلك آيات الله نتلوها عليك بالحق وما الله يريد ظلما للعالمين ولله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وإلى الله ترجع الأمور والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Jazakallah Ridwan Radamir Sahib. The English translation will be done by Bilal Arge Sahib.
United your hearts in love. so that by His grace you became as brothers on the brink of a pit of fire, and He saved you from it. Thus has Allah explained to you His commandments, that you may be guided. And let there always be among you a body of men who should invite to goodness and enjoin virtue and forbid evil, and it is they who shall prosper. And be not like those who became divided and who disagreed among themselves after clear proofs had come to them. And it is they for whom there shall be grievous punishment. On the day when some faces shall be white and some faces shall be black, as for those whose faces will be black, it will be said to them, did you disbelieve after believing? Taste then the punishment because you disbelieved. And as for those whose faces will be white, they will be in the mercy of Allah. Therein will they abide. These are the signs of Allah compromising the truth. We rehearse them to thee, and Allah desires not any injustice to His creatures. And to Allah belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is in the earth. And to Allah shall all affairs be returned for decision. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah Bilal Agha Sahib. We will now have a Qaseedah, an Arabic poem written by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, the Promised and Mahdi alayhi salam, in praise of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, fi Mahdi Muhammad Mustafa Khatam al-Nabiyyin, couplets 10 to 23, and that will be done by our National Secretary Tarbiyat and Talim, Regional President, Eastern Cape Saga Jamaat, ABUBAKAR OPPONG Sahib.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuhu. The poem I'm to recite was written and composed by the long-awaited Messiah in the person of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad alayhi salam, solely in praise of his beloved master, the Rasulullah Kareem, the Rahmatullahi Alameen, the Suraj al-Munir, the Khatam al-Nabiyyin, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ya Rabbi, salli ala nabi qada'iman fi hadhihi dunya wa bahthin thani wa qad iktafaka ulunha wa bisidikihim wa da'u tazakura mahadil awtani qad asaruka wa faraku ahbabahum wa taba'adu min haqqatil ikhwani qad wada'u أهواءهم ونفوسهم وتبرؤوا من كل نسب دعاني زهرت عليهم بينات رسولهم فتمزق اللهو كالعصان في وقت الترويح تلك الليالي نؤوره والله نجاهم من الطوفان قد حازهم ظلم الناس وضيقهم فتثبتوا بإناية المنان نهبا لآم نشوبهم وكارهم فتهله بجواهر الفرقان قصه بيوت نفوسهم وتبادروا لتمتع الإيقان والإيمان قاموا بالإقدام الرسول بغزوهم قال الشاك المشق في الميدان قدم الرجال لصدقهم في حبهم تحت السيوف أريك القربان جاءك منهوبين كالأريان فسترتهم بملاهف الإيمان يا ربي صل على نبيك دائما في هذه الدنيا وبحث ثاني صدق العظيم.
Jazakallah Abu Bakar Appong Sahib. Translation will be done by Afnan Alam Sahib from the Western Cape Circuit Jamaat.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I'll be reading the English translation of the Arabic Qaseedah in place of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The wise chose your company and followed you, and the truthful relinquished their hearts and homes to be with you. They chose you and abandoned their friends. They distanced themselves from their families. They bid farewell to their base desires and self-indulgence, and they discarded all their material belongings. When the clear signs of the truth of their prophet became manifest upon them, their base desires were shattered to pieces like the smashed idols. They became enlightened in the pitch darkness of night, and Allah saved them from being engulfed in a raging storm of torment. The fury and wrath of the opponents attempted to grind them to dust, but the mercy of the beneficent Lord sustained them, and they remained steadfast. The despicable and accursed of the earth looted all their belongings, but their faces gleamed upon receiving the pearls of the Qur'an. They thoroughly cleansed their souls of all impurities and moved forward to gain the wealth of unflinching faith. In the battle, they stood with a messenger in ranks. intoxicated in love, they marched forward to the battlefield. The blood of sincere lovers was shed under the sword, like the blood of sacrificed animals flowing under the knife. They came to you looted and naked, and you clothed them with a cloak of faith. You found them dirty like a heap of dung, and transformed them into a piece of pure gold. And the wilderness of Arabia was transformed into such a garden, the streams of which are pleasant and sweet, and the trees of which are laden with fruits. The towns of Arabia awoke to life once again, leaving the days of death and drought behind. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah Afnan Alam Sahib. I will now take this opportunity to welcome you to the second session of our 56th Jalsa Salana, South Africa. To my right, we have Mufti Muhammad bin Salih Sahib, Ameer and recently in charge, Jamaat Ahmadiyya Ghana. To my far right is our national president, Maulvi Mansoor Ahmad Zahid Sahib. I just want to welcome our distinguished guests, friends of the Jamaat, and fellow Jamaat members. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We will now start with the speech the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, missions of peace and love to mankind. And that speech will be done by IHSAAN Dawri Sahib.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لقد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة لمن كان يرجو الله واليوم الآخر وذكر الله كثيرا. Respected Chairman, Ameer Sahib Ghana, National President, Jamaat South Africa, all invited guests, brothers and sisters, I greet you all with the Islamic salutation of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. I've been asked to deliver a speech that was prepared by Tahir Dlamini Sahib, who unfortunately could not be here to deliver it himself. The verse that was recited before you, I would like to read the translation. Verily you have in the Prophet of Allah an excellent model for him who fears Allah and the last day, and who remembers Allah much. The principles of universal brotherhood and the doctrine of equality of mankind, which he proclaimed, presents one of the very great contributions of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to the social uplift of humanity. All great religions have preached the same doctrine, but the Prophet of Islam had put this theory into practice, and its value will be fully recognized, perhaps centuries hence, when international consciousness has been awakened, racial prejudices have disappeared, and the greater brotherhood of humanity has come into existence. God Almighty has great love for His creation. One manifestation of this love is that He desires that all people treat one another with mutual love, compassion, and respect, so that they can come to attain His blessings and rewards. The ultimate manifestation of the love that God Almighty holds for His creation is the perfect and incomparable guidance that He has provided for mankind in the shape of the Holy Qur'an. Hazrat Aisha, the Holy Prophet's honored wife, may Allah be pleased with her, is reported to have replied to those who desired to know more about the Holy Prophet ﷺ's character after his death, that his character was the Qur'an. Within the Holy Qur'an, Allah has described with His all-encompassing mercy and His compassion, but alongside this, He has also commanded mankind to fulfill the rights of each other at all times. It was for this very reason that Allah sent the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a mercy for all mankind. It is remarkable that there is no myth or mystery about the life of the Holy Prophet. His life was an open book. He was known as the truthful and the honest one, and lived a pure life before his claim to prophethood. Every detail about his life is well preserved in history. It is a well-known fact that he was not able to read or write, as he never had the opportunity to go to school and learn from any teacher, but God was his teacher. He received the call from God at the age of 40 to proclaim the message of Islam to mankind. Respected Chairman, brothers and sisters, the Holy Prophet ﷺ's life was dedicated to the establishing on earth of the unity of God, who alone is worthy of our worship, and through establishing that relationship with Allah, people should become civilized and behave justly towards one another. That is the total environment of peace. The Holy Prophet ﷺ and his followers suffered all kinds of injuries and persecutions at Mecca for 13 long years. And when life for them became unbearable, they migrated to Medina. The Meccans, having failed in their plot to kill the Prophet, now pursued the Muslims to Medina. Allah then permitted the believers to fight the aggressors in order to end persecution and to defend their rights. The deadliest incident which took place in the desert town of Taif, where the Holy Prophet was brutally attacked with rocks and stones for simply preaching his message. Due to that, he left Taif in a state while he was bleeding from top to foot, to the extent that his shoes were filled with his own blood, so that they became very slippery. It was difficult to walk in the shoes which he was wearing. It was then that the angel Gabriel appeared to him and said to him that if he wanted, he, Angel Gabriel, would crush the mountains over the people of Taif. The Holy Prophet answered, "No, I am not for destroying people, but I have come to revive mankind. I am suffering immensely," he said. "O my Lord, I complain to you of my total helplessness, being totally powerless without any means. And I complain to you of me being totally unable to do anything against my enemies, against those who have overpowered me. O merciful being, who is the most merciful of all those who are merciful, are you relegating me to my enemies? But if you are not angry with me, and you have decided all this, that this is my fate, provided you are not angry with me, I am also ready for all this. Do whatever you may please. Hand me over to my worst enemies, to anyone, but I look for your pleasure. If you are not angry, then everything is acceptable to me. Then there is no complaint. But what I am afraid of is your anger, your displeasure, that this should not happen out of your displeasure. I turn to you, and I pray and beg of you to save me from this, to keep me under your own protection, and don't relegate me all this. Although I am ready, but I want otherwise." He said, "O Lord of the light, in the name of your brilliant face, which enlightens the entire universe, the heavens and the earth alike, and all darkness is turned into brilliance and light. What I seek from you in the name, your only forgiveness, only your favor, that you never be angry with me. Of course, you have every right to punish me or anyone else. Punish me, but not with your anger, please. For trial maybe, but never with displeasure. If I don't have you, I have nothing. Without you, there's nothing left in me, nothing left for me." This was his prayer at the time. I should point out here that neither the Holy Quran nor the Holy Prophet ﷺ ever claimed that he had been sent only as a mercy for the Muslims, but instead his compassion and his mercy extended to all humans, irrespective of differences of religion or belief. In fact, the Holy Prophet ﷺ was sent not just as a source of mercy and compassion for humans, but indeed also for animals and for all living things. When a person has been especially sent as a source of love, compassion, and forgiveness for the entire world, then it is certainly impossible that his teachings should ever prove to be a source of harm or suffering for anyone. It is similarly impossible for his acts and deeds to violate the rights of anyone or cause them injury in any way. On the contrary, it is certain that a sincere person who desires for others to be treated with compassion and mercy will himself willingly endure great pain and anguish in order to benefit others. This is exactly how we find the life and the character of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. There is no doubt that his conduct was based solely upon the teachings that were revealed to him by God Almighty. The Holy Prophet, the promised Messiah ﷺ has written, "It would not have been possible for me to have attained this grace if I had not followed in the footsteps of my Lord and Master, the pride of all the prophets, the best of mankind, Muhammad, the chosen one, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. Whatever I have achieved by following him. And I know from verified, reliable experience that no man can reach God and obtain a deep understanding of his ways without following that Prophet, may peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. Now let me also make it known that the very first thing you are rewarded with, after having completely submitted yourself to the instructions and teachings of the Holy Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, is that you are granted a new heart, which is always rightly inclined. That is to say, a heart which has turned cold upon the love of this material world, and instead it begins to yearn for an everlasting heavenly pleasure. Having achieved this desire, his heart is now fit to receive that perfect and purest love, the love of Allah. Because of your complete obedience to him, all these blessings are bequeathed to you as his spiritual heritage. This is from Ruhani Khazain, volume 22. We Ahmadis believe that the Messiah and Mahdi who was to come has indeed arrived in the person of the founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, whose name is Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian alayhi salam. During his lifetime, he shined a bright light on the true and real teachings of Islam. And it is as a result of his guidance that our community, the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat, spreads the message of love, compassion, and peace throughout the world. The promised Messiah ﷺ himself outlined the main objectives for which he had been sent. He said that his primary task was to bring mankind closer to God and to draw the attention of mankind towards fulfilling the rights of each other. He was sent to bring an end to all religious warfare and to spread Islam's true teachings, which are of love, affection, and peace, and to establish true human values. Therefore, we Ahmadi Muslims promote these teachings throughout the world. Nevertheless, when certain anti-Islamic groups choose to either mock or ridicule our holy book, the Holy Qur'an, or to insult our master, the Holy Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, or to raise wholly false allegations against them, then this naturally leads to our feelings and sentiments being grievously injured and hurt. Furthermore, there are many Muslims from different sects who themselves are extremely hurt by such distressing acts. From this perspective of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, I can say with certainty that we never display any wrong or inappropriate reaction and never seek to take revenge, and we never take the law into our own hands. Instead, we constantly strive to present the true and beautiful teachings of Islam to the world, and so in this way dispel all doubts and suspicions that may be raised against the religion. Sadly, certain Muslim groups or individuals react to the provocations in an entirely wrong way and retaliate or seek revenge, and thus discord and disorder spreads within society. Consequently, through this event today, I would like to convey the message that we must endeavor to consider and respect the feelings of one another. I would like also to request all of you to help and assist in our efforts to fulfill this crucial object. We must try to promote peace and reconciliation in society, because the alternative is burning flames of hatred, and conflict will continue to erupt and will come to engulf the entire world. Thus, it is my prayer and desire that all of you should help us to promote love, affection, reconciliation, and brotherhood throughout society. In our own circles of influence, I would urge you to propagate to others the importance of respecting and honoring one another, as this is the only way that we can save the world from the impending devastation. Because we already see that in the vast majority of the world, disorder and frustrations have become widely prevalent. If these are allowed to continue, then it could lead to another world war, and the final result of such a war will be colossal destruction and devastation, the like of which we have not seen before. Respected Chairman, brothers and sisters, I end here by saying, may Allah have mercy on the world and may all mankind come to realize the great need to fulfill the rights due to Allah Almighty and to His creation, as this is the only way that the world can be saved from catastrophe. May Allah reward you abundantly and enable us all to follow the right teachings of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah Ihsan Dawrey Sahib. Our next item on our program will be a Nazm. That is a Urdu poem written by Hazrat Mir Muhammad Ismail Sahib Radiallahu An, a submission of the praises of the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and that will be done by Master Noor Muhsin Alam.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Naat Padargah Zishan. Padargah Zishan Khairul Anam Shafi'ul Wara Marjai Hasuam Pasad Ijzu Minnat Pasad Hikaram ये करता ही अर्ज़ा पुकाए पुनाम ऐसा पुकारे
will say a few words in solidarity. Ridwan Alam Sahib, Rian Alam Sahib.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good morning and friendly, loving greetings to our dignitaries and our invited guests. We're honored to have you. And as the chairperson pointed out, we do at this point of our program invite invited dignitaries and people to come and say a few words. And thus far, out of the people that we've invited for this particular time slot, there are at least 5 people that have come. The president of the Ahmadiyya, Anjuman Islam Lahore group is also just arrived, Mr. Mohammed, welcome. But before we get into the formal speeches, there was one of our longtime friends, Nick Patton, that suggested, instead of him just giving a formal talk and address to the gathering, that instead he engage in a type of dialogue, Mr. Chairman, and take the stage and speak briefly with another person. He suggested me even. And I said, well, if I'm available, I'll try and come, but I have my hands full at the moment. But him and our long-standing friend, Mr. Plaikis, Cecil Plaikis, would then now just come to the stage and have a dialogue for a few minutes. All these speakers are asked to talk for about 10 minutes or so. So the organizers have agreed to that. And then therefore I'll ask you, Nick and Mr. Plaikis, Cecil Plaikis, to just come up. I have a mic with me. And then for 10 minutes, engage in a type of dialogue, a discussion, and at the same time share the experiences that they've had with Interfaith and with working with our community.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I'm not very good at the formal, as Marabi knows, but I greet you all and thank you for the privilege of having us here and sharing in this Jalsa Salana. I think it's my 5th one. So my good friend Cecil Plaikis and myself are going to improvise, as it were. We find that very often the truths that we all cherish and hold dear come into our lives when we respond sincerely with another person. Well, Cecil and I have many dialogues. I'm come from a Christian background, and Cecil, I'll let him introduce himself now, but we wanted to share the space with you with some of our own interfaith dialogue. And of course, the Ahmadiyyas have been pioneering in terms of facilitating dialogue with people over the years, and we really do laud you for that. So, Cecil, I'll hand over to you.
Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. Yes, my perspective is the faith that I follow is Buddhism, specifically Nichiren Buddhism, which is a Japanese form of Buddhism, which was started by Nichiren Daishonin in the 13th century in Japan. But I'm also very much part of Interfaith in Cape Town, and the last year or so have been particularly interesting in terms of developments in interfaith. Also my, I would call it history with the Ahmadi Jamaat goes quite a long way. And I know that interfaith and dialogue is very important or crucial part of your belief system. So in this, we're going to play this.
Yeah. So I hope you don't mind a little bit of experimentation and interaction. I, in my mind, include all of you in this conversation. I'd like to start myself with reading from Ibn Arabi, who is a Sufi mystic. And this is a beautiful poem of his. Unfortunately, I'm not going to do the Arabic. I'll do the English translation. My heart has become capable of every form. It is a pasture for gazelles and a cloister for Christian monks, a temple for idols and the pilgrim's Kaaba, and the tables of the Torah and the book of the Quran. I follow the religion of love, whatever way love's camels take. That is my religion and my faith. How do you respond to that as a Buddhist?
in Buddhism, the Buddha came for everybody. So the faith is open to everyone. There's no border to the faith. Anybody can practice and experiment with the faith. So if you have a faith and you close the doors as to say some are part of it and others are not, that is not the Buddhist way.
So it would seem that as a Buddhist, you've got an advantage to including people in your way of thinking.
I would say so, yes.
Because I think us monotheists, the people of the book and the Ummah of Islam, would probably find it more difficult than some of these other religious practices or communities where inclusion is more deeply part of it. So I think one of the things that's most on my heart at the moment, and as Cecil says, in the Cape Town Interfaith Initiative community, we've experienced a very, very difficult year. Lots of relationships have broken down, and we've been asking ourselves questions: Why is this? Has there been people walking away from trust that we had built up over the years? So I'd like to continue asking that question. It has to do with the world as it is at the moment, especially in the last couple of years. Division has become almost like an epidemic. And we know from, let's just take the COVID era, vax, anti-vax. It makes us very emotional. We take sides very easily. So it's very hard to hold the middle ground. And I think one of our chief tasks as human beings is to understand the dynamics of division and then to practice the love and inclusion that help us to deal with that division.
Coming also back to dialogue, and this is not just a religious theme, it's dialogue in every aspect of life. Speaking to friends is fairly easy, right? Because there's already a bond of trust. You have a history together. But if we close dialogue to people with whom we differ, then there's a problem, because then there's no hope for humanity. Then we cannot actually solve problems. So if we decide that, yes, Nick is a Christian Taoist, I'm a Buddhist, we are very far apart from each other, I don't see any connection between us, then how can dialogue ever happen? And how can we solve problems that's common to humanity? So what we've discovered is a situation where in the faiths in Cape Town in particular, where people decided that I cannot have dialogue with you. You are now my enemy, and there's no way I can associate with you. So I think the Ahmadis will understand that actually very well. You know, when a religious group decides that, yes, we cannot associate with you for whatever reason. Also, today we find even more than in the past, in the last decade or 2 or 3 decades ago, that we rub shoulders with people from all walks of life, from everywhere in the world, coming from religions that we have never encountered before, and from ideologies that we haven't encountered before. So today it's even more important to be able to get into a dialogue with people with whom we disagree or whom we do not understand, you know. So the friendship can only happen in Buddhism. Friendship is another important theme, and it's spiritual friendship, where we engage with each other, not just socially, but in order to understand each other's hearts, to go really deep into conversation. So to get to that level, we have to first, I suppose, forget the differences and then look deeper into, if I may say, the soul of the other person, and develop the bond in that way. So that will never happen if we just decide from the outer facade that we will not associate and we will not have a conversation with the other. I think Nick has also got the theme of othering. I don't know if you had a chance to say.
Well, I just wanted to say that many people create a division with others based on belief. They say, my belief is different to your belief, so therefore I can't associate with you. Now, I used to be like that. I went through a short phase in my young life of Christian fundamentalism. So I had a belief about what the truth was, and everyone who didn't hold that belief, for me, were other. And as I grew in my spirit, as I came to accept people and accept life in a larger way, I realized that othering was not what our religions and our deen is calling us to. We are called to seek unity with the other, the so-called other, and eventually they become not the other anymore. I think Gandhi said that I don't have an other, because he at his heart saw Muslims and Hindus as having an essential unity, and that when people emphasize the differences, even to the point of going to war with each other, they are lacking in the spiritual depth that Cecil is talking about. So othering is a very important dynamic in the world. And if you're an anti-vaxxer and I'm pro-vax, I have to be aware of when I'm othering you and you're coming with your anti-vax, and then I'm getting frustrated and irritated. And at that point, I have to ask myself, wait a minute, what am I doing here? This is actually my friend of 20 years. They hold a different opinion on vaccines to me. And I have to be very careful about not alienating them. And I've seen a number of friendships break down over issues like this. But nothing is as divisive as religious fundamentalism. So the idea that my religious belief is correct and every other, including yours, is incorrect, that is going to create real problems. And I think the challenges of all religions and all spirituality today is to recognize that at its root within ourselves, and then seek that deeper belonging that you're talking about. I don't have a question for you, so it's up to you.
Yes, I think fundamentalism is a topic that will take us into a lot more time, which we don't have now. But fundamentalism is not just in terms of religion, but it can also be in terms of ideology, of whether today we see it with the current war between Ukraine and Russia, which already polarized people along two blocks and two sides. So we're back in the Cold War, so to speak. And we know at that time, from the one perspective, the Russians were the bad guys, and from the other perspective, the Americans and the West, so-called, were the bad guys. And then there was a bit of a truce. Things happened in between. So now we're back there again. So are we going to believe things like that again? That we cannot associate, we cannot talk, we cannot trade, we cannot deal with the other. So I think it comes down to us realizing that we are human first, before anything else. And as human beings today, as I said before, more than in any other time in history, we have to learn to live together with each other. Also, we will never agree with anybody else, with everybody else. That's also a reality. So even using our energy and our time to just trying to get the other person across to our side, that's also going to be a bit of a waste in terms of our lives. So there will be a point where we have to acknowledge that those differences, or some of those differences, will always be there. But we still have to have respect for humanity and respect for the person, and be able to work together for things of common good.
I was speaking to a Muslim friend this week, and we were talking about the Ahmadiyya movement, and he said the Ahmadiyyas and other separatist movements, and I said, stop. The Ahmadiyyas do not separate themselves. They were separated. So there's a sense in which it's easy to have a throwaway line about somebody that is, I'm not going with the majority. Knowing you guys to some extent and knowing that you practice love for all, hatred for none, I know that you are not seeking separation, but you have been separated. So part of the discussion about othering must include how the mainstream Ummah has othered the Ahmadiyyas. And that's a conversation I'm very interested in. And I know it's a difficult one, and it's one you might not even want to talk about. But I put it out there as a question and an offering. I don't hold strong opinions on it, but what I do wish for you is that that dialogue can be entered into. So I would see a challenge for the Ahmadiyya community as being a challenge of intra-faith dialogue. How does the Ahmadiyya community reconcile with the broader Islamic community? And I'm just, as an outsider, putting it out there, and I'm wondering how that could be. I would like to hear from you what your ideas on that would be, and how can the interfaith movement, and specifically the Cape Town Interfaith Initiative, facilitate that kind of dialogue? Because I've seen a lot of prejudice against you, and I defend you whenever that's shown. I also defend from Islamophobia generally. So I'm just put that offering there. We as the interfaith community are here to serve you, and we would like to hear from you in this respect. So Raun, how's that? Is our time up?
Thank you, Nick.
Okay.
Yes, your time
Thank you so much.
unfortunately is up, but yes, thank you for those thought-provoking words. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think the experiment was a success. We've not done a thing like this in our Jalsa normally, but to hear from two speakers, engaging in a dialogue like that, and I think the things they spoke of may be of interest to many people, and those kinds of questions and those kinds of issues are the things that we speak of and we deliberate on, and we reflect on at our interfaith meetings. So those of us who are not involved in the interfaith work that we do, you're most welcome to join us. Thank you once again, Nick and Cecil. Our next speaker is an old friend of our community, Mr. James Elman. The friends of us who do know him, he's a staunch Catholic, and he's been coming to our community now to our gatherings for so long now, and I don't think he needs further introduction. I will ask James to just address us and say a few words. Thank you, James.
Good morning, my dear sisters and brothers. Peace be upon you. Thank you for once more inviting me to share a few thoughts on the challenges that we are facing as communities of faith. And I know this is specifically your challenges that you would like to look at. But I'll share a few thoughts that we have, challenges that we have, and maybe it might be very similar, and maybe ways to look at it. Okay, so we have just come out of a time of fasting, and I know that you have too, and there are other communities that have also come from a time of fasting. And now we are in a time where we celebrate, and the fast was really to prepare us for the celebration of life, allowing God to be our guide. And with this, I think it's important to ask God to guide us, because we as communities of faith, we always have to look for guidance from God. We call God by different names according to our tradition or our tongue. And I want to ask that God to guide us, to bless this meeting, to bless us all when we go from here, the things that we have heard, that we can share it with others, not keep it for ourselves. And this is always the beauty of a blessing that I always describe to the young people that I work with. If we receive a blessing, it's like a very good joke. Unless you share it, it's not really going to work. Because if you keep the joke to yourself and you go to a little corner and you laugh and everybody's saying, what is so funny? No, this is a good joke. I want to keep it to me, to myself. People are going to think there's something wrong. You might end up in a nut house. So, in our community, you know, when we start our Holy Mass, when we come to church, normally the priest would say, "The Lord be with you." And the people would respond by saying, "And also with you." And one of the things in our community that I have learned is that we don't listen anymore. We know what's being said. So it doesn't really matter what he says. If the priest is going to say, "The Lord be with you," we know, and also with you. And sometimes there's no feeling in it. So one day what happened in our church, the microphone didn't work. And the priest went like this. That sound didn't come. He just said, "There's something wrong with the microphone." And the people said, "And also with you." So we're not listening anymore. We just go through the motions sometimes. One of the challenges that we also have is our children. We need to start teaching at home. Because what happens, what was so beautifully when I saw these, you know, they are young men now, but they were boys when I met them the first time. They were little boys. And they grew up, you know, with the faith. And that's beautiful to see. But there's a story of this young boy. He went to Sunday school. And of course, nothing was taught in the house. But the parents said, "You must go to Sunday school. It's now your time." So he went to Sunday school. And the mother always liked to brag with the child, you know. "My boy is the best. He can tell nice stories of what happened to him and so forth." So he went to Sunday school. And he came back and she had all the aunties there. And to show her child off, you know, because she's proud of her son. And she said to her son, "Tell them what you learned today in Sunday school." And the boy said, "Wow, we learned about Moses and the people that were slaves in Egypt." And the mother said, "Wow, tell us more." And no, they left Egypt. And then all of a sudden, the Egyptians chased them. And so they had to get away. But there was a big sea in front of them. And then Moses said, "What the heck are we going to do now?" And there was a young man called Joshua. And he said, "I've got a plan. We build a bridge over the sea. And then we cross this water." But then Moses said, "But the Egyptians are coming. They're also going to cross the bridge." And then Joshua said, "Of course, there's a plan. We put dynamite under the bridge. When we cross over and they come, we blow this bridge." And the mother looked. And the aunties looked. And the mother said, "Is that what you learned today?" And he said, "Mommy, if I have to tell you what we learned today, you will never believe me." We have to start teaching our faith at home. We can't send our children to the mosque or to the temple or to the church to begin learning about the faith. It has to start at home. So these are also some of the challenges. And then, of course, often we say, "I can't do it. It's too big a task." But you know, Mother Teresa said, if we do small things with great love, we can achieve a lot. And so this is the challenge. Let us do small things with great faith, with great love, and with compassion. And these are the words that we as people of faith use naturally. So let us continue to do this. And then there are times, of course, where we as adults, we know the word of God because we read it in our holy books, whatever our holy book is. And we are taught that we must take the lower places, the lower seats, so that people can then rather say, come sit here, come sit in front, because you mustn't sit there, you are our special guest. But now, what happens is, we have become so proud that we would go and sit there, and we will say to our friends, check this out. Then they come and call you, and you have to come to the front, and you see how important I am? And so sometimes we lose our humility, even as people of faith, amongst our friends, amongst our community, that we think that we are more important than the others sometimes. So this is another challenge. We have to look at ourselves and ask ourselves, who am I? Who am I? I'm a child of God who has been called to serve the community. In our tradition, we say, we are the servants of the servants. So we are all God's servants. But because we are being called especially by God, we have to be the servants of the servants and not the bosses. When I was with the Capuchin community as a friar, people often came and they said, "Oh, Brother James," they put me on a kind of a pedestal and did not understand really what my role was, what my position was. To them, it was because I was wearing this habit, this brown cloth that I was wearing, that the monks would wear, and they would think that I am more important than what they are. And I had to explain to them, we are all the servants of God, but because I chose this path, I am your servant, I am the servant, not you are my servant. Because often, faith leaders think that they are the bosses and they have the last say. But we have to listen. We have to listen to our community. And we must not lord it over them. Because if we look at the great sages and the saints, they were ordinary people like us. They did not have any special gifts most of the time. They were very ordinary. But the one thing that sets them apart is that they always allowed God to be the center of their lives. And St. Augustine, one of the great saints of his time, he said that anybody who says he knows God or she knows God completely does not know God. Because one of the things that he wanted was to understand God completely. And he realized that his brain is not big enough. My brain is not big enough. Your brain is not big enough. And so he was trying to work through this, walking along the beach. And he saw a little boy running up and down, taking a bucket of water out of the sea, the big ocean, and throwing it into a hole. And he ran in again and threw it into the hole. And he said to the boy, "What are you doing?" And the boy said, "I want to throw this sea into this hole." And Augustine said, "But that's impossible." And the boy said to him, "What you want to achieve is impossible. You cannot get God into your head." And of course, the boy disappeared and he realized that it was a vision from God speaking to him. We must always ask God for guidance. There was a time, Nick was talking about COVID, people taking, this COVID injection, the vaccine, and people not taking it. There was a time when government used to come to the people of faith for guidance. I think it's the other way around now. And I think we as people of faith need to take that role again. Where we, our country was going through a terrible time called apartheid. The faith leaders played a leading role. And we need to play a leading role again in our country. Our country is in a mess. But it is because we as people of faith, we are quiet and we don't really deal with this head on. We as faith leaders need to play that role. But our hearts needs to be open to be guided by God. Because in my personal experience of what I have seen, some of our faith leaders, I will say this word, they are sellouts. They go to receive and they would yes and okay what government is saying a lot of times. Certain things need to be challenged. This is another challenge I'm putting out there. And we as people of faith need to put our heads on a block and say no and say yes to certain things. But we can't just let things go like this. So I want to end off again by saying that we as people of faith have a responsibility because we don't represent ourselves. We represent God, God Almighty. And no matter what our tradition is, what our faith background is, it is very much the same, very similar. Love, compassion, care for the widow and the orphan. In our communities, there are people struggling. They've got no food at all. They really have nothing. And most of the time, the people who care for them are the people who've got nothing also. It's so crazy. But God blesses those people to always share the blessings that they have received. And even in our own communities, if we know in the Ahmadiyya community, in the Catholic community, or in the Buddhist community, or any community, if you know of somebody in your own community that is struggling, lend a helping hand. Because sometimes we are quick to go to another community and help there, but the people in our own community are struggling, and we are not taking care of them. We have to start everything at home, like I said, with our children. We start at home. Like I've seen these boys who grew up, and they are active, and they have started at home. They did not go somewhere else first, they started at home. So let us play that role actively. The question again is, who am I? Who am I representing? Thank you. Peace be with you.
Thank you so much, James Ullman. It's been a long time that we've heard your voice now. I mean, just reflecting on the Jalsa itself, it's the first one we've had since COVID. So to see the faces in a gathering like this, it's heartwarming. And to be reminded of these age-old, lessons, of kindness between mankind. Thank you so much. Our following speaker is Mr. Ibrahim Mohammed. He's the president of the Ahmadiyya Anjumat Ishaat Islam Lahore. He's arrived now, not too long ago, and he has spoken to us before. We've reached out to our parallel community, the Lahore community of the Ahmadiyya community, and to have him here again is an honor. Mr. Mohammed, if you can please come up and say a few words. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allow me first to thank the host, Marabi, of the Jalsa for allowing me to say a few words on a topic of vital importance to all of humanity. That is Islam's response to contemporary issues. This is the brief that I received. if we are to compare the moral condition the world finds itself in at present to a human being like me or us, and we compare the global justice system we encounter today with its flesh and bones, we will see a man that is so crippled and shriveled up that he can no longer stand upright and walk straight with a firm gait and a clear direction, metaphorically speaking, of course. However, to deal with a topic of this nature in limited time, you will agree indeed is a tall order. But I understand, and thus I have decided to confine my talk briefly to Islam's contribution to the topic of world justice in its truest and unadulterated form. One of the reasons I believe the world is in such a pathetic state where justice is concerned is as a result of the fact that men have completely sidestepped and ignored the guidance provided by Almighty God, our Creator, who is consistent and free of human flaws that are the root cause of the misery the world faces on a daily basis these days. This brings me to the Holy Quran, where Almighty Allah, in dealing with justice, tells us in chapter 16, the B, verse 90, Inna Allaha ya'muru bil adl. Surely Allah enjoins justice, adl, wal ihsan, and the doing of good to others, wa ita'i dhil qurba, and the giving to the kindred. The same verse continues by telling us something about the opposite side of justice. وَيَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ, and he forbids indecency, injustices, harm to others, etc. وَالْمُنْكَرِ, and he forbids munkar, evil, like spreading lies and creating mischief in the land, for example. Wal-baghi, and he forbids baghi, violent, unruly uprisings, such as unlawful rebellion or tyrannically induced wars that cause wide-scale destruction. Here you will have noted the Holy Quran mentions 3 degrees of true justice that culminates in the highest form of compassion, like a mother for her children, juxtaposed with 3 degrees of evil that culminates in the highest form of human suffering, baghi. We are told first that it is Almighty Allah that enjoins adl, justice. However, adl or justice on its own signify the very basic form of justice, limited to returning good for good on the one hand and executing punishment proportionate to a crime committed on the other hand. It is sort of what we might say the justice system every nation puts in place, supposedly for the benefit of all its citizens. But from what we see happening in the world these days, the human-engineered justice systems prevalent across the world are often biased in favor of those in power. This leads to situations where, on the one hand, what might be regarded as justice to those in power, on the one hand, might be a form of gross injustice to others on the receiving end. The problem is further exacerbated when such injustices are presented and often even forced upon people as the norm by an unscrupulous media skilled in the art of deceit and propaganda on the payroll of such powers to be. To illustrate the point further, there was a time in this country where racial oppression known as apartheid was legal according to those then in power that formulated the laws and made it part of the South African justice system. But it was not justice for the majority of the citizens of this country. Many see the plight of the Palestinians these days in a similar vein. Although Israeli occupiers would argue birthright as a form of justice of illegal occupations. Then look at the unipolar hegemonic powerhouse made up of America, its British and European allies, referred to as the West, and backed by their powerful military-industrial complex as another example. They believe that in the name of their ill-designed form of democracy, they have the right to invade, sanction, and kill millions in order to bring about forced regime changes that suit their nefarious foreign policies and agendas. Yet, this they argue, they do in the name of justice. Having said this, as a Muslim, I will, in all fairness, also turn attention to our own doorsteps. Here too, we come across many examples of gross injustices. But for the sake of brevity, I will confine myself to Pakistan because it is a country that claims to be pure Islamic. For that is what Pak means. Now, the majority of Pakistanis that I know are some of the most devoted and loving Muslims. The same, however, cannot be said about those who designed their justice system and rules the country. It currently has some of the most corrupt leadership and one of the worst human rights records in the world. In their religious autocratic world, freedom of religion, which is the very essence of Quranic and prophetic moral teachings, is a no-no. Yet it is illegal for minority Ahmadi Muslim communities to say their prayers publicly, for which, according to their legislature, they can face a jail sentence of up to 3 years. This is not justice. It is instead a form of baghi, the worst form of injustice, a form of religious persecution and oppression, even worse than apartheid, where at least freedom of worship was not illegal. And still we find this blatant form of religious persecution a low priority on the agendas of human rights organizations in a world bereft of any form of true justice. But I will now show that all these tainted man-made laws that oppress fall outside the ambit of Quranic justice called adl. In fact, it is the very opposite, fahsha, evil, indecent, munkar, evil, baghi, large-scale corruption and oppression. So what does Islam have to offer? Well, for starters, we will find that the term adl for justice in the verse under discussion is not used in isolation. And we see that Almighty Allah in His infinite wisdom has added ihsan, goodness, which means Islamic justice must be accompanied by such goodness that are primarily meant for the upliftment and benefit of all human beings, regardless of religion, race, creed, or color, and not oppression and persecution. Thus, by Almighty Allah adding ihsan, justice in its raw basic form is now elevated to a higher level of higher level, free of oppressive laws and depriving people of their human rights and freedom. But the Holy Quran does not stop there and takes adl combined with ihsan, goodness, even a step further and adds wa'ita'idil qurba, and giving to the kindred. Giving to the kindred in this context also serves now as a metaphor that highlights the true spirit with which such justice should be executed. And that is with selfless, humane compassion, in the same way a loving, devoted mother would treat her own children, her own flesh and blood. It comprised inter alia tolerance, freedom of religion, the right to a decent education, the right to medical care, the right to choose a leader with integrity that will serve and not exploit, the right to own and dispose of property, the right to employment, etc. This is the kind of justice the Holy Quran enjoins. Justice that is untainted, free of man's selfish low desires and evil plotting and scheming. Justice that is executed selflessly with compassion for the benefit of all mankind as commanded by Almighty Allah. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Wayana anil fakhsha, and he forbids indecency that comprise all kinds of injustices. Wal munkar, and he forbids evil. Wal baghi, and he forbids rebellion that leads to wide-scale uprisings and violence. But since it is but human that sometimes even the best and well-meaning from among the judiciary might be inclined to be unfairly biased towards those they regard as their enemies, the Holy Quran expressly lays down in chapter 5, verse 8, the golden rule of absolute fairness to be applied in such cases. And it says, O you who believe, be upright for Allah, bearers of witness with justice, and let not hatred of a people incite you not to act equitably. I repeat, and let not hatred of a people incite you not to act equitably. Be just. That is nearer to observance to Allah. And keep your duty to Allah. Surely Allah is aware of what you do. What a powerful verse, unique to Islamic scripture. Together with the verse already quoted and explained, this verse now, without a doubt, emphatically underpins the cure that Islam prescribes for a world crippled by the pandemic of injustice still plaguing its body and soul. May Allah Almighty have mercy on us and lead us and guide us on the right path, inshallah. Amin. Jazakallah khairan.
Jazakallah. Riyad Alam,
Jazakallah. Thank you so much, Mr. Mohammed, for those inspiring words. Our next speaker is a lady that she's a reverend, but she's actually honored us by respecting our tradition of keeping our ladies on separate from our men in our public gatherings, and that's Reverend Pippa Jones, who I believe is on the other side. Yeah, if I can ask her to come and address us, please. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. To my brothers, to my sisters, to those who have invited us and me to speak today. Thank you, shukran, thank you, thank you. My name is Reverend Pippa Jones. As you can probably tell from my accent, I'm not South African, so I feel doubly privileged to be here today. I have spent the last 22 years a student and a devotee of understanding what interfaith is. It included, of course, going to an interfaith seminary for 3 years, but it has also included worldwide travel, service to people with a desire and an aim to bring interfaith understanding and love wherever I go. And it continues. It's now my vow to the Almighty that that's how I want to spend the rest of my years, as long as I have breath in my body. So thank you. If I may, I would like to take us, as the song says, for any of you who have ever watched the movie Sound of Music, where shall we start? Let's start at the very beginning, the very best place to start. In our Abrahamic traditions, we share, of course, Adam. So allow me very briefly, and I will be brief because I know that people are hungry and I don't want to take up too much time. But allow me to bring a Jewish and Christian thinking just for a moment. And bear with me because there's a reason why I'm bringing these two things to you today. In the Torah and the Bible, it's known as Genesis chapter 1. And there is a verse, and more specifically, there's a word in that verse that I think has been a cause of many of the problems that we're seeing in our world today. You probably know or have heard of that verse where God says to Adam and to Eve, "Go, out you go." And if you're to believe the Western translation of it, go and subdue. Go and conquer. Go and have dominion over all the earth and everything that you find in it. Well, sadness upon sadness. Scholars through the years have realized that that word, whether willingly or unwillingly, we will never know, but was grossly, grossly misinterpreted. If you're to take the original Hebrew meaning, it actually, as many words in Hebrew, and I know the same in Arabic, it's like a flower. Once you start taking a root of a word, it unfolds layer upon layer. But there are two things. That word was mistranslated because the first word was, go be loving custodians of all that is in this world. Go be loving custodians. My, how we have erred in this respect. The second meaning of this key word is actually, and it's two words in English, if you can believe it, cultivate relationship with that is opposite to you. Cultivate relationship with that is opposite to you. Of course, we can say male, female, black, white, north, south, east, west. You can unpack it in any way. But what an amazing commandment that they were given at the very, very beginning. I'll come back to that in a moment. But secondly, let's fast forward. If you know the story from Genesis, of course, Adam did the very thing that he was told not to do, Adam and Eve did. And they hid in shame as a result of it. And there's something quite remarkable about this particular part of Genesis because, of course, Adam is hiding. And what had happened before, as you'll see if you're a student of theology as I have been for all these years, you realize that peppered throughout this is God makes statements. Do this. Let this be. Let this be happen. Let this happen. It's all statement, statement, statement. And the very first question that God asked in these two traditions is this: where are you? Imagine that's the first question that God Almighty asks of mankind. Where are you? Of course, he knew where Adam was, but the question had to be written down. And I believe that that in itself can be unpacked. When we're standing on land, we must always think, where am I? Who was here before me? But I also think, where are you now? Where are you now? Look around you. What needs your attention now? Well, we know for certain that the earth needs our attention. Society needs our attention. The marginalized need our attention. We're called, I know, and we know, and we're all of the same accord, to go back to that original word, collaborate that which is different to us. And in a way, to be like the 7 colors of a rainbow. Red is never asked to be orange. Have you noticed? In a rainbow? Blue is never asked to be indigo. It's just allowed to be blue. Why? Because if those 7 colors sit together, what do they bring? Nothing but pure, unadulterated beauty. We're meant to be different, but we're meant to be sitting side by side in collaboration, to be emissaries of that beauty. What brought me to South Africa? Good question, long question. I won't bore you with it, except to say this. Part of my lifelong journey through interfaith took me from Australia, where I was in service to the communities there, took me to the Netherlands to study a master's in interfaith studies. And part of the reason why I chose the course is because it had a mandatory internship attached to it. And as destiny would have it, that internship brought me here to Cape Town. And it has been my privilege to be in service on Cape Town Interfaith Initiative since then, and to much of the work that I've been doing with my beloved colleagues, many of whom I can see here today, and of course our Ahmadiyya brothers and sisters. And in my research, I discovered this very thing, that it was collaboration that colluded and helped and assisted towards the liberation struggle. Story after story after story after story. 2 that I'll share very quickly with you. 1, the beginning of the Cape Town Interfaith Alliance happened in a jail where a Jewish leader, a Muslim leader, and a Christian leader, united in their protest against apartheid, had been arrested on the same day. And in that jail, broke bread together for the very first time and realized the only way we're going to be able to make a difference in the world that we see it now is that we collaborate together. And thus, as we know, history was made, religious leaders came together, and thank God, we celebrated just 2 days ago, Freedom Day eventually came. Alan Borsak, as you know, Dr. Reverend Alan Borsak, he talks of a time when he was linking arm in arm. On one side, he as a Christian man, on one side, a Jewish leader, on the other side, a Muslim leader. They were marching And because the forces were against him, they were actually locking arms. And later, it was only later that his Muslim brother said, you know, so committed am I to linking arms with you that I did something I've never done before. And I held the holy book in my left hand because I didn't want to let go of your arm. That's where we find ourselves. May we continue to be the colors that we are, not asking to be different, but alongside one another, to bring beauty and light and love and liberty and peace to our communities, to our country, to our continent, and to the world. Let it be so. Salam alaikum. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Pippa. Our time is against us. We did have a bit of a late start to the program this morning, but I'm going to try and, if it's possible, fit in, two. I would like to. There's a lady that's been waiting for some while, and if she can keep her address to like 5 or so minutes. She has come to our Jalsas before, and that is Princess Lorraine, Apostle Lorraine. If she can also join us and come up and say a word, and keep a kind address to 5 minutes before I'd like to call up our last speaker, Laurie Gam. Thank you.
I may be able to speak the languages of human beings and even of angels, but if I have no love, my speech is no more than a noisy gong or a clanging bell. I may have the gift of inspired preaching. I may have all knowledge and understanding, all secrets. I may have all the faith needed to move mountains, but if I have no love, I am nothing. I may give away everything I have and even give up my body to be bent. But if I have no love, this does me no good. Love is patient and kind. It is not jealous or conceited or proud. Love is not ill-mannered or selfish or irritable. Love does not keep a record of wrongs. Love is not happy with evil, but is happy with the truth. Love never gives up, and its faith, hope, and patience never fail. Love is eternal. There are inspired messages, but they are temporary. There are gifts of speaking in strange tongues, but they will cease. There is knowledge, but it will pass. For our gifts of knowledge and of inspired messages are only partial. But when what is perfect comes, then what is partial will disappear. When I was a child, my speech, feelings, and thinking were all those of a child. Now that I have grown up, I have no more use for childish ways. What we see now is like a dim image in a mirror. When we shall see face to face, what I know now is only partial. Then it will be complete as God's knowledge of me. Meanwhile, these three remain: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of this is love. The president of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, the organizers of this wonderful Jalsa, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to take this opportunity to say, may the peace of the Lord be with you all. Assalamu alaikum. Shukran, and thank you so much once again for being invited in this Jalsa. More than 3 years ago, we were not allowed to meet like this. We had to sit a meter apart. We had to cover our faces, and we had to be afraid of one another. I must say, it's an honor to once again be invited by this community, coming from a Christian political and traditional background. President of the Ahmadiyya community, I must say, on this day, I'm invited for the first time to two conferences at the same time, Muslim conferences. This one and another one, which is Africa-based. It is based, once again, as a coincidence, in Eklon. And it's very heartwarming to stand here and say that I can safely say Christianity might be prevalent from a Christian background where I come from, but in Africa, I know Islam has become very prevalent. That then takes me to the fact that the topic you have chosen today that says dealing with contemporary issues in the Islam context, I have to say that I looked up very briefly what are these contemporary issues. When I looked online and I perused the Oxford Dictionary, it gave me a very brief description that says these are problems that currently affect society. Today, I took it upon myself that I am going to challenge myself and wear the oldest of shoes that I have in my rack and try to walk with it publicly and see how will I feel. I must say, climbing the stage, it was so very painful for me because the first thing that I thought of and my heart bowed to was the shoes that I was wearing. That, oh, do you know that there are many people that eat from dustbin? Apostle Lorraine, Princess Lorraine, Sister Lorraine. Do you know that somebody today woke up and doesn't know what they are gonna eat? Do you know that today somebody woke up with a blue eye? Do you know that a child died in the hands of their mother or their father? These are the contemporary issues, Apostle Lorraine, Princess Lorraine, Sister Lorraine, whatever they call you, that you've got to face. I got so very humbled as I researched and perused so much contemporary issues that appear across the world. And there are more than 100 contemporary issues, but 4 of them jump out immediately in front of me. One of those is equal opportunities. The second one for me is poverty, drugs, and crime. The third one is lack of religious stability. The fourth one is lack of proper cultural and political norms. In everything that we discuss here today, I do believe, standing in solidarity with this community, that you have done so much in so little time to make sure that we are united and peaceful as a nation. One of the things that we are very much mindful of is that we've got to live in peace. The theme always of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community is that one that says love for all and hatred for none. In 30 seconds, I know my time is up. I must say I want to bring as a testimony that the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, I know it very well to be loving and kind. Whenever I take a phone and call them and say, there is a community somewhere that lacks, they are out there with food parcels, not to bring religion, but to bring love, kindness, peace, and to show people that we can live together with or without our religion jumping in front of us. By this, I wish you all and pray that this becomes an inspiring, motivational, and always an opportunity to develop each one of us. I thank you. Shukran.
Thank you, Apostle Lorraine. It was really good hearing from you after such a long time. Thank you for those inspiring words. Our last speaker, which unfortunately is, I believe is the first time, is Mr. Larigam. And for what time we have left, sir, we ask if you share your thoughts with us. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. It's good to be with you. I've been asked a couple of times before, but I finally came. So it's good, really good to be with you. And I'm wearing two hats today, although you can't see them. But the one is that I'm also involved with the Cape Town Interfaith Initiative, like my other friends here. But then also coming from the organization called Gender Works. It's a non-profit organization that facilitates workshops at UWC. We've done a lot with students, but also with the Council of Churches in the Western Cape, for example. We do workshops, facilitate workshops on gender and sexuality, hot topics of the day as well. And therefore, I want to commend you also for the topic you have chosen, to also face the difficult conversations that we have to have and that we have to learn how to engage with. My question would be, how do we deal with new scientific knowledge that come to us? And I think you're already setting the example for us here by inviting diverse voices into the room and listening, opening oneself up to a diversity of opinions and voices. But as society progresses, looking at my own experience coming from the Dutch Reformed Church as a minister of religion that started studying in 1990 at Stellenbosch, and first having to grapple with the legacy of apartheid and the guilt of apartheid that came with it, specifically in the Dutch Reformed Church, where we for a long time scripturally legitimized apartheid. So we had to have a look at the way that we read our holy scriptures and how we interpreted it. And we had to say it is actually our racism that influenced our reading and determined how we interpreted it. So I think that's a very important thing that one must become aware of, that one always reads your scriptures also through lenses. And those lenses are sometimes colored with different ideologies, which can be very problematic. In that year, 1990, when I started studying, there was 7 women for the first time in my class of about 25. And they were the better theologians. Many of them were academically very strong. But it was only that year that women were first allowed into the ministry to be ministers alongside us. And I could feel my colleagues and some of our professors even giving the clear message to them that they don't belong here. They rather belong in the kitchen to do the service. And so also on that level, we had to start reading our texts differently, to go back to the text and to look at our interpretation and see where we're coming from and how that influences the way that we read and understand our scriptures. Just a last example would be my own, because I had to come into the knowledge that I am a gay minister of religion. Once again, a very difficult reality to grow into. My dad being a minister of religion himself, retired now, but I had to own this truth of my identity and to grapple with it before the face of God and to make peace before the face of God and to reconcile my faith with my sexuality, and to move forward from there with responsibility, living responsibility as a gay Christian. So these are just a few examples of race, gender, sexuality, things that will be also on your table in our society as we get confronted by new knowledge in different ways. Sometimes the new generation brings the challenge of a new issue on the table that they want movement on. Sometimes the lived experience, if we listen firsthand to the storytelling of someone sharing their experience, then it moves us to include more voices, more people in their fullness, to bring them to the table and to bring them into the fold. So, challenge for you, for each of us, to stay open, to be aware of our emotions coming up when we feel threatened maybe by new knowledge coming our way, but that we also have to take new scientific knowledge and how society is shifting through the challenge of new generations, through the lived experience we listen to inform our way of going forward in society. Blessings to you. May your deliberations go well. It's good to be with you.
Thank you, Mr. Larigam. That, Mr. Chairman, concludes the presentation for the dignitaries and the invited guest speeches. We do want to apologize for perhaps to one or two speakers who we unfortunately couldn't accommodate within the time. And we hope that the lunch break we will have you will make up for that. Okay, Jazakallah.
Jazakallah, Rian Alam Sahib. Jazakallah to our dignitaries and the solidarity speeches. We're coming now to one of the highlights of our Jalsa Salana, and to introduce our keynote speaker who's going to address us today will be Tawfiq Arge Sahib.
Introduce.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fine.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm not the keynote speaker. I'm just introducing the keynote speaker. I wasn't aware of this task. Chairman Sam just sent me a WhatsApp message. Can you please introduce our keynote speaker? It's one of the most difficult tasks to do. Here's a man in front of you that every one of you sitting here to this morning or to today should feel indeed honored to be present in his company. This is a man who I met for the first time in 2015 in Mauritius, where we attended the centenary Jalsa Salana. And I have always had a passion for Ghana. I remember his predecessor, MAULVI Abdul Wahab bin Adam, a man who I held in the highest esteem. And when he passed on, I thought, who are they going to appoint a person to succeed him, a person with immense quality? And right before you, on my right-hand side, this is the man, MAULVI Al-Hajj Muhammad bin Saleh. He is the person outside of Pakistan who's the president, the Ameer, and missionary in charge of the largest Ahmadiyya Muslim community in the world. They have close to 1 million members, 600 mosques, over 300 missionaries. Literally, number of schools, hospitals, clinics. A man who has trained as a missionary. He has been a missionary for the last 45 years. He is 75 years young. I was told that very clearly yesterday. Not old, young. I hope I can say that and you overlook that. A man who, as I said, is a distinguished writer, he's an author, a prolific speaker, a man that has been sent directly from Huzur, which is the spiritual head of the worldwide Ahmadiyya Muslim community, to represent him at our august function. We have literally 150 people here, maybe 200 people. This is a man who presides over Jalsa Salanas in Ghana, where we have 35 to 40,000 people. Where we have over 5,000 people just attending the Tahajjud prayers. We are indeed blessed and honored to have Al-Hajj MAULVI Muhammad bin Salah as our guest speaker and to take 1 week of his busy schedule to spend time in our country. This is in fulfillment of the prophecy of the Prophet Messiah. I'll cause thy message to reach the corners of the earth. And this is the first time that our guest speaker had the privilege to visit Cape Town. With those few words, I thank you.
Jazakallah. I hope, Ameer Sahib, we have done justice to the introduction. You may proceed.
سراج منير للعالمين محمد رسول الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Brother Chairman, President, of course my colleague, President of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community of South Africa, the National Executive Council members of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community in South Africa, my brother, the leader and head of the Anjuman Ahmadiyya, we commonly among us call the Hori group, and a sister, of course, leaders of other religious bodies, and all other invited guests who've been invited and who are present here today in their various capacities for the purposes of singing one and the same song, the commonality of humanity. Indeed, all my Muslim brethren present here, I extend to all of you the Islamic felicitation of peace, love, and mercy of the Almighty Allah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. The world in which we live today, that's the contemporary world, has been described in the Holy Quran simply in a verse as Zahar al-Fasadu fil Barri wal Bahri. That devastation, destruction has permeated or taken the world, the land, as well as the sea. It is to say that this era, contemporary times, is that era in which we get up every morning to the beats of drums of war. And the beats of drums of war is what sends us back to sleep in the night after having hustled throughout the day. This contemporary era is referred to in modern times as the digital age. Digital age in all essence, deeply looked at by extremists. Means a world without religion, a world without the need of a God, indeed a materialistic world. That should not be the meaning of digital age. A digital age is that age, should be that age in which the scientific theories that you numerously find in the Holy Quran have become manifest in their numbers, and man is beginning to employ his intellect on the gifts that Allah himself has given us and manipulating those gifts that Allah Ta'ala has given us and which he himself has commanded us to manipulate in a way that we will be able with them to solve the challenges that come our way. And we're virtually at the peak of that era. And that is correctly what is referred to as the digital age. The digital age is the age of science and technology. And for that matter, we're talking of advanced science and technology. Science and technology has always been with us. But this is the period, the era, that would find it at an advanced, more than it has ever been in this world. That's to say that it's comparative. I don't know about tomorrow, but the past we can tell, because we've seen what the past has left behind for us, and compared to what we have for ourselves, I can always say, without any fear of contradiction, that we are at the peak of scientific and technological development. Man has tried the best that he can to use these technological assets to solve his material needs. But as we use these very assets to solve our material needs, we do not at the same time recognize the source of that very technology which we are privileged to have and which we are using now to solve our problems. And because of our inability to give this acknowledgement, we are at war with our own development. We are at war with our own achievements. The very science and technology which we are privileged, which we have developed, we are at war with it because of the misuse of it and the negative outcome of it that we are forced to swallow willy-nilly. Distinguished brethren, the world as we find it today is in dire need of one particular ingredient. Any part of the world you go to, regardless of religion, regardless of culture, regardless of economic standing, regardless of whatsoever. The world as a whole is unique in that demand. And that singular demand which is sought after by the world is peace. P-E-A-C-E, peace. And yet, with all the technological advancements we are employing to ensure that we arrive at peace, as much as we employ those technological developments to attain and achieve peace, the more that very important ingredient distances itself from us, so that we become our own enemies. That is why Allah says in the Holy Quran, in reference to our current age, that Zahar al-Fasad fil Barri wal Bahri. Our contemporary times is bedeviled with too many challenges, more than have ever existed in any human era. Too many for anyone to think of standing or even sitting down or even writing to be able to cover that whole field within a space of time. They are just too many and too complex. They are more complex than our own complex developments. And this is the reason why we are not able to overcome them, because of their complexity and superior complexity to our scientific and technological developments. Why don't we have peace in the world? There are very many reasons, contributing factors to the absence of peace. One basic thing that the Quran teaches us is that, and it's the reason why there is absence of peace in this world. And I mentioned that yesterday in my khutbah, Friday sermon, which was to the effect that Allah is the best planner. And as the best planner, therefore, before he brought man to the earth, he knew all the needs, the things that man would need for his moral, for his spiritual, as well as physical development. And he put all of them in place before creating man. I did mention that before Allah created man on this earth, he knew to start with that we would need the earth itself to live on. We would need the earth to build our houses. We need the earth to cultivate, to get our food. We need the earth for everything. But that alone was not sufficient. Apart from the earth, he created many more other things. And the human being was the last that Allah finally put on earth. And as the human being came to the earth, he came to find that there is every other thing that he or she needs. And that all the other things that exist in this world, they have all together been pressed into the service of man. And Islam asks the question, why? Why man? Why have all these things pressed into the service of man? Why? And the Quran says, it is for the purposes of man to have the peace of mind, to be able to worship his creator as the purpose of his creation. That is the purpose for which man was created. Unfortunately, we are refusing to allow that peace to be there. We are unable to unearth that peace, to create that peace, to develop that peace, which therefore raises the question mark whether we have that needed peace of mind, and therefore, in the absence of that needed peace of mind, are we adequately worshiping our Creator, for which purpose He created us? Now, Allah Ta'ala, the Quran tells us that having created all these things and placed them to the service of man, they belong to the whole of mankind. And that is why it is referred to as our commonwealth. I'm not referring to the Queen or the King's commonwealth. I mean wealth that is held in common for and on behalf of all of us. Held for and on behalf of all of us, because we are not living in an animal world. We are human beings and not in an animal kingdom. Human beings are an organized species, and representation is what drives the engine of humanity. As human beings in an organized order, therefore, our commonwealth must be held in trust for all of us. We all at the same time cannot be the treasurers of our commonwealth. If you take the world as a country, we, each and every one of us, cannot be the president of a country at the same time. That commonwealth, which is in the rulership, the ownership of that country and its rulership, must be entrusted to somebody or some group of persons among us to shepherd us for and on behalf of all of us. But here is a case now that is not sure it has been done, but because we are misusing that trust, we started creating problems for ourselves, problems which cannot be resolved. For instance, some people are wealthy, others are poor. The wealth that we have in a country is meant for every Tom, Dick, and Harry. Each and every person has a share in the wealth of a nation, and under no circumstances must anybody denied the right to partake in the commonwealth. But what do we find today? The absence of equitable distribution of wealth. All the political hullabaloo that we have in the world, looked into seriously, at the bottom of it is appropriation of wealth, accumulation of wealth in a few hands to the detriment of a larger section of the community, due to the inability of the system to put in place a system of equitable distribution of that wealth, so that each and every member of that society gets his or her share of that wealth. That is the challenge that we're sitting on now. It is the reason why somebody becomes the president of a country, if finds it difficult to give way for other people to come. And tension is built in the country. And for as long as it continues to be that system, we'll continue to be having problems in the world. How does Islam solve this challenge? Islam has solved it in the Holy Quran by making us understand, first and foremost, that the wealth of our various countries of the world belongs to all of us. And any system, economic or financial system that we put in place must take cognizance of the fact that the wealth belongs to each and every one of us, and everybody must be made to have his or her share of that wealth. Unless and until that is done, we will never have our peace of mind. Take, for instance, you are a commercial farmer, you have a tractor, you have a combine harvester, you have all the farm machinery, and you cultivate thousands of rice fields, thousands of acres of wheat, maize, or what have you. Now, those thousands of acres of maize, that land which you cultivated does not belong to you. You were not born with land. Your great-grandfather came and met land. Nobody, there isn't any of our mothers who ever brought forth any of us, and alongside she brought forth land as well. Nobody. Therefore, land is commonwealth. So you ask yourself, how come you, an individual, have access to thousands of acres of land? And it now becomes what you refer to as mine, yours. And then you cultivate tons and tons of wheat and what have you. Then you become a multi-millionaire to the detriment of all the others who equally share that land with you. That is why we have our problems in the world. That Islam says that yes, we cannot all be effective commercial farmers at the same time. Some of us will be farmers, others will be fishermen. By farmers, I mean people who cultivate land, fishermen who are agriculturists anyway. Some of us must be farmers, some must be fishermen, others may be goldsmiths. Some may be in civil service, others in public service. Because there are multiple needs of man which must be attended to. And each person has his or her role to play, so that collectively done and done effectively that way would be able to solve our problems from whatever angle we look at them. Therefore, since we all cannot be commercial farmers at the same time, the law of representation demands that those who come out to be the agriculturists among us must be given that privilege of having that land and those other facilities so that he or she can cultivate the land and produce the needed food for our total consumption. Therefore, what? You find one man becoming a millionaire by virtue of the fact that he is a farmer. If you want to be a millionaire, he will tell you also then also go and farm. But can you also get those thousands of acres of land? Can you also get the tractors that he has, the combine harvesters, the other machinery? Can you also have them? It's not meant to be so. There is division of labor. And once there is division of labor, that must be attended to religiously. If we must make a way forward in our life. So what does Islam say? Islam says, yes, it is a privilege, but you had so much. You've earned it. You did not steal it. You worked for it. But remember that the other members of the community, the other sections of the community have a share in your wealth. It was a privilege for you to use that 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 acre of land that belongs to you and me, but only you used it. That was a privilege. Therefore, you must know that whatever the income from it, the revenue, the plowback, whatever it is, you must know that by virtue of the fact that I commonly earn that property with you, I have a share in the wealth that you make out of that land. So Islam says that you must pay zakat. Zakat simply means poor tax. And it's arranged in such an economic system that zakat, if properly paid and properly administered, there will hardly be anything called hunger in this world. For instance, time was when we were made to practice family planning. And at those early times, they tried to make us understand that by family planning is meant birth control. Birth control because they felt the resources available in the earth are not adequate enough to take care of an overwhelming population. And therefore, we must limit the number of children that we bring. It's false. That was a falsity. If you go to a country like UK, the land size of UK and the land size of Ghana, the country that I belong to, there is very little difference, not much. If you take England alone, hardly can you say England is bigger than Ghana without adding the other components. But the population in Ghana is only about 30-something million. When you go to UK, the population is much more than that. I'm talking of people occupying about the same land mass. But we have a minute population while they have a very large population. And yet, they have been able to eliminate poverty. And we are wallowing in poverty when we have the advantage of much more land than they have if you take the populations into consideration. Despite that, if you open the dust bins of not the whole of UK, but only London, the city of London, if in the morning you go to open the dust bins, the leftover food, which is gone waste, which they fed themselves and they did not need, which they pour out into the waste baskets. That unwanted food in the waste baskets for a single day alone can feed the people of Ghana for 1 month. Waste. Why do you therefore say that it's because the population is too large and that is why there is poverty in the world? No. There's poverty. We are wallowing in poverty And it has developed all these challenges, economic challenges, political challenges, racial challenges, what have you, because of the absence of equitable distribution of wealth. Distinguished brethren, racial differences is one other subject we have in the field of our contemporary challenges. Tribal differences, political differences. Indeed, one of the greatest diseases we have in the world today, which is a product of our contemporary times, and is a product of this digital age, this technological age, is what is referred to as superiority complex and inferiority complex. Superiority complex and inferiority complex, these two are the worst enemies of a society, a human society. As and when they set into any society and become part and parcel of the life of any people, they are bound to retrogress. Not because Allah has not provided ways and means of progression, but because we on our own have decided to act the opposite and to implement it the opposite way, opposite to what has been prescribed for us. In its wake, therefore, we created hatred for each other. And trying to dig down to the bottom of the hatred as to what is the cause of that hatred, you dig down as far as you can go. You are not able to find it. What is that cause of that hatred? Where is it? Mr. Hatred, where are you hiding? You will not be able to find any identifiable person or thing which is called hatred, and from which hatred emanates, and from which hatred has permeated the world, and for which all aspects of our life, even the worship of God, religion itself, has been overtaken by hatred. Interreligious hatred and intra-religious hatred. Interreligious superiority complex, as well as intra-religious superiority complex. It is there, clear, even in religion. So, therefore, give birth to organizations like, what do you call the religious dialogue? What do you call the group? Interfaith initiative, which is good. Which is to say that we are waking up to the realities. The realities that we do not understand our religions. We have just inherited the religions, but we have not taken pains to understand what it is. It's just become a culture. And we jump into it and we say, well, that is what it is. On we go. Without studying to know exactly whatever it is. So, on the basis of religion, we do not want to see each other. Where we are forced to meet, we are only pretentious. On the basis of color, we don't want to meet. We can only be pretentious. On the basis of nationality, the same thing, and so on and so forth. That is the creation of technology. As far as technology itself is concerned, Allah says in the Quran that all that knowledge is there in it. He says, Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar. That we, that is He, God, has given you abundance of good. A'tainaka al-kawthar. Kawthar means abundance of something. It's so abundant that it can be given out abundantly and it will still be there abundantly. Fasabih birabbika wanhar. Therefore, because you've been given abundance of good, you show gratitude to your Creator for giving you that abundance of good. But it doesn't end there. And He said, wanhar, and offer sacrifices. What is the meaning of offer sacrifices? It is to tell us that Allah says that He has given us abundance of good. We should show gratitude to Him. Yes, we do. Wanhar, but make sacrifices. Do we make the sacrifices? For instance, the mountains that surround us, the sea that is on the other side. There's a lot of wealth in the sea. There's a lot of wealth in these mountains. Under the ground there is wealth. Allah tells us that yes, there is wealth there. Wanhar. But you must make an effort to get it. That is the sacrifice in you. When you make an effort to please your God, that is the act of sacrifice. For you to attain that wealth, Allah says, I have put it there for you, I have pointed that it is there, go and take it. But you will have to employ your ingenuity, which also I have given to you, to get to that wealth, which I have kept there for you. But I don't want you to be passive. I want you to be active. Get up and work for it. If you cannot work, get up to work, to earn a living. There is no way you would have an enjoyable living in the world and you would think that there is even somebody you must thank for making it possible for you to enjoy that good living in a peaceful world. That is God. So you must go and work for it. That is why I say that it is a creation of science and technology. There is nothing bad with science and technology. It is the misuse of science and technology that will give us negative results. And we have done that, and we are reaping the fruits of the negative effect of our negative attitude or misapplication of science and technology. God hasn't left anything out. Even apart from our physical good, even for our spiritual development, God continues to send His prophets. His prophets. It is not only rain that God makes to fall on us to let our crops do well. He also gives us the sunshine to let the crops do well. In like manner, He doesn't take care of only of our material needs, but also our spiritual needs. He takes care of them. And it's the reason why He sends prophets. And the Quran says, وَإِن مِّنْ أُمَّةٍ, that there is no nation, there's no group of people in this world among whom God has not sent a warner, a prophet. So, we find ourselves in a world which we refer to as contemporary world. Don't forget, for people of every age, people of every age have also got the contemporary world. At that time, that was the contemporary world they lived in. So their challenges were different from our challenges. At the time of the First World War, the arsenal that was available to the warring factions they are not the same arsenal that we found that was used in the Second World War. It was a highly improved version of the arms, of the ammunitions. Whether even what was used in the First World War can be called an ammunitions, I'm not sure. But let's accept that they were armed and ammunition. What I'm saying is that every era is contemporary to the people of that era. The First World War, that era was contemporary to the people who lived at that time and who fought. And the materials they used to fight, they were the most modern, most scientific that they had or they knew of. For all you know, they could never dream of what we have today, where America can sit where it is now. They don't have to move. They only locate where we are sitting here where we are sitting. If America wants to eliminate all of us right now, they don't have to move. They will direct whatever it is, I don't know what they call it, but it will come and finish all of us here. You look around, you will not find anybody. So, Allahu Akbar. So, you would find that in the Second World War, what was used were supposed to be sophisticated weapons compared to that of the First World War. Here we are in our contemporary world, and we are beckoning to the Third World War. With what we have on hand, out of our own scientific and technological endeavors, the deadly weapons that we have developed for ourselves, for our sinister purposes, which at the time of the Second World War, what they used, they couldn't even fathom, they couldn't even think, they didn't have the idea of things like that. And yet they fought. Imagine the number of people who were dead. This time, will all of us wipe out the whole world within a twinkle of an eye. With the developments, the outcome of application of science and technology, what we have developed for sinister purposes, because of hatred, because of suspicion, because of superiority complex, because of inferiority complex. And out of that, we suspect each other and we are ready for each other at any moment. I don't care, let us all go. That is the slogan. Because the one who is launching and throwing that, he will also go, he knows. But he says, therefore what? To start with, you are a believer. He may not be a believer. He doesn't believe in the hereafter. He thinks one, he has come to the world and lived and dies, that's all. Is that your belief? No. You believe that there is a day of reckoning. So, that is a marked difference between you and him. Distinguished brethren, I think we have listened to too many speeches. And it should be enough for the day, and we can leave the remaining for some other day. But there is a saying in my language that a rich man or a rich person is not that person who has a very big bank balance, It's not that person who had a lot of wealth. It's not that person who even has gold bars under his bed and all over his bedroom and everywhere. That is not a rich man. That saying says that a rich man is that person who has people. He loves people and people also love him. But if you have whatever is in the world, but you don't love people, and as a reaction, people don't love you, they don't have time for you, but don't call yourself a rich man. If you are a king and you sit in your palace the whole day and nobody appears there, I don't know whose king you are. Maybe lizards. If you are a very rich man and you have no time for anybody, you lie down there. One of our young men, this man sitting down there, had on his shirt Ferrari written on it. And one of our elders told him, "Oh, you send me home in your Ferrari." He didn't have a Ferrari, it was only written on his bed. Maybe he's never seen it even. But if he really had Ferrari, and in his practical life, he had no time for anybody, he felt superior to everybody, and nobody would come near him. Let him fall sick. Simply fall sick. Simply let him suffer a running stomach. He cannot take telephone to call an ambulance. But he has helicopters, he has private jets parked there at the airport. He cannot beckon any of the private jets to come and break through into his bedroom and pick him from his bed and send him to hospital. He will rot there. Because those material things cannot be of any service for him. They are not meant to be of that service to him. It's his fellow human being who is supposed to be of that service to him. If they will not, you get rotten. There was an occasion, one elder who was well-to-do fell sick. At a point, the family believed sincerely that he was about to die. So the children and grandchildren who were all around the various towns and cities, they called all of them, they came around. They sat there around the bed where the man was standing, where was lying down. What they noticed was there was bowel movement from the man's stomach. What was the immediate reaction of the children? They say, "Oh, lift him from that bed, put him down on the floor. Put him down on the floor. He will soil the bed sheets. He will soil the mattress." That man, he toiled and bought that mattress himself. He toiled and bought that bed sheet himself. But his own children, it is not his living or dying that they are concerned about. They are concerned about what they will inherit. The old man is going, let him go quickly so that we inherit. But if he eases himself and soils the mattress, a dead man's mattress, which he has already soiled, who is going to inherit it? That is the nature of materialism. And that is what we get out of materialism. Your own people, you die in our contemporary times. The father is dead, he's lying down, the body is there. You sit somewhere and send one of his own children, or that, "Oh, there is a pen just by the side of the bed. Pick it and bring to me." He said, Why? Because his dead father is lying on the bed. He hasn't got the courage to approach his own father. He thinks that dead body can get up and grab him. Why should your father get up and grab him? You see more your father because he died? But that is what we get from materialism. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Muhammad Mustafa. Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa. Ghana Jamaat. South Africa Jamaat. Malay Takbir.
Humanity. Zindabad.
Humanity.
Yeah.
Malay Takbir.
Humanity first.
We thank Ameer Sahib for a beautiful speech, alhamdulillah. And I hope we take a lot of lessons out of it. Again, says Jazakallah, Ameer Sahib. Our next item on our program will be a special thanks and gift presentation, and that will be done by our National President, Jamaat Ahmadiyya, Murabi Mansoor Ahmad Zaid Sahib, and it will give presentations to the dignitaries, small gifts. Murabi Sahib.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. It is a great pleasure to see all our interfaith friends and our brothers and sisters. It has been a long time that we never met like this because of the COVID. And they were all the things were online. But today, many of them, they have come. We are very grateful to them. And we are very thankful to them. And whatever they share, it was a wisdom. And I hope that those who have listened, they will pick some of the things. There is a token gift for them, just to mark for them to come here. So I will request the Lajna President to be given the gift to the two ladies, those they joined with them. And I will also give here to our brother, friend Nick Patton, Cecil Plasty, James Elman, then Laurie Gome, if I'm not giving the wrong. So, okay. So can I invite Mr. Nick Patton?
Barakallah.
Mr. Cecil Plasty.
Barakallah.
Mr. Ibrahim. Mr. James Elman.
Barakallah.
And Mr. Laurie Gome.
Is that the correct pronunciation?
I am not sure.
Barakallah. I also came.
Yes.
And I've spoken too.
Yeah. It will be in our final session.
Jazakallah. Indeed, we thank our dignitaries for their speeches and their presence here today. We thank everybody joining and enjoying the second session. And now we will now close the session by doing our Dhuhr and Asr prayers, and that will be led by Murabi Mansoor Ahmad Zaid Sahib, our National President, Jamaat Ahmadiyya, South Africa. And after that, There will be lunch served. As you go to the exit at the back, to your left and right, that is for our friends. There is exhibitions of Humanity First. There is a bookstore. Please partake of these exhibitions. And there is also some free gifts at the back. So please make your way to those exhibitions. Jazakallah. We will now end this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We will now, as the Chairman has said, start our prayers. So I would ask the team responsible for that, Sam Kudam, to start pressing out the salamats and getting ready for that. And our guests, they may join us if they want to. They can watch us if they want to. But after our prayers, we will be having our lunch, and there's a special table there for our invited guests. Someone will take you to the table. Thank you.